The most recent time I heard that song, it's from Pippin, for those who are unfamiliar with it. The most recent time I heard that song on Broadway, Ken and I took Toby to see his first Broadway show when he was 16, just a month, 6 weeks after moving in with two gay dads. We had to take him to a Broadway show. It's in the rule book somewhere. But the first time I heard that, I was 16. And it wasn't on Broadway. It was a university production that our drama teacher at my Catholic high school, Brother Eugene, had taken us all to see at Marymount College. And when Misa and Audrey and I began thinking about the music that made sense for the talk about what's your calling, that was right on the top of our list, and just so beautifully built and brought to us with the music team. And I think it sets the stage nicely for the conversation I want to have about calling. When I think about that 16-year-old kid, a lot of big dreams growing up in Kansas, and a lot of big fears growing up in Kansas, and unsure of where I would end up and what would become. But there was everything was possible at 16. Everything was in front of me, and there was almost a Pollyanna optimism about what was ahead of me. But now, that Pollyanna optimism has given way to a well-reasoned pragmatism. Like, there are jobs that I have not gotten because I was openly gay. There are opportunities I've not been given because I was too old or too this or too that, or I was never told. As many of us, we never find out the opportunities that we miss. But the story I want to share is, after 13 years of fighting for a seat at the table in academia, I lost not one, but two jobs that I really loved at Stanford, which is where Audrey and I first met. She was one of my MBA students, and most MBA students don't have a voice like that. It's not what they go on to. But as some of you know, in the midst of the pandemic, in January of 2020, I lost my teaching position, not because I did anything wrong. Some would argue because I did too much right, but it was a political maneuver that I was told that as long as I was a university administrator, I wouldn't be able to continue teaching in the classroom. One of my other TAs said, I kind of thought maybe if you couldn't teach, that would be a good reason to not teach in the class, but that wasn't what it was about. And then 6 months after that, the university administrator role that I had, the person who had hired me, we had a difference of opinion about what leadership is, and I had been hired to run a leadership program, but his name was on the outside of the building, and he had raised all the money for it, so his definition of leadership is the one that they went with, and I found myself in my mid-50s, unemployed, having lost healthcare benefits, as well as tuition benefits when my kids ultimately would reach college age, but mostly having lost my sense of self-confidence. It is a tough, any of us who have lost jobs, whether it's of our own mistake or other circumstances around us, there's that sense of, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. And I was blessed that Ken and I decided that I shouldn't rush into something else, and I took some time off. I like to call it an unpaid sabbatical. When I discuss it in job interviews, that's what I call that period of time. And I was able to heal and serve. I had not taken paternity leave when Joshua was born, and so I got time with Joshua, time with Roma. They were home a lot because we're in the midst of COVID, and I got to renew and I got to refresh, and mostly I got to reinvent. It's been said that when you're not able to go out fishing is a good time to be at home repairing your nets. And that's what I did, is I spent time trying to, and successfully, repairing the nets of my life. One of the many experiences I did during that period of time, as I became became reacquainted with my friend Chip Conley, who you may know. He's an author. He founded the hotel chain Joie de Vie, and then sold that hotel chain to, I think, Marriott. And after doing that, Chip was offered an opportunity to go to Airbnb. And he went to Airbnb at 54, which is roughly the age I was, thinking he'd been hired because of his knowledge of the hospitality industry. And he got there on day one, and the founders of the company were 27. You could add their ages together to come up with his age. And he recognized that he was the adult in the room. He was, the phrase he coined, he was the modern elder. And it was really his years of wisdom and work experience that he was able to bring to Airbnb, first as an employee and later as an advisor. And through that experience, he created the Modern Elder Academy. And for those who are online, you can go look at it. For those who are in the room, keep your phones out of your hands. You can look at it later. But what the Modern Elder Academy is it's a school for people, a whole life school. So many people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s who are going through a transition. And I've taken 2 classes from them online. I've not done any of their in-person programs yet, but I look forward to that. And I want to share some of the insights from that and how that gave me a different definition, a different view of what we mean by calling. The first class I took was a class on life transitions, and it ended the last weekend in April of 2021. And the first weekend of May, Ken and I, on a whim, set foot in our house in Marin by going to an open house that was not on our schedule. And that transitions course literally set me up for one of the biggest transitions that I would experience in terms of real estate. And one of the items that I got from that course is that the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to then give it away. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose is to then give it away. So the next course that I took from them was the purpose course. Now, admittedly, Ken and I, it's nice that he's not here today, so that everybody who is unfamiliar, Reverend Ken is my husband, as was mentioned in the intro. He's on retreat this weekend, really spending some time rebuilding, renewing himself, so that he has everything to give to our community when he comes back for Easter next weekend. It was also his birthday on Friday, and so my birthday gift for him this year was, I'll take the kids all weekend, and I'll do your job on Sunday for you. Like, it's not a bad birthday gift. I also bought him a Robert Graham shirt, you know, the one, yeah. So he's got something to unwrap and something he's experiencing. He also took the purpose course with me, but he didn't really hang in there. He's not really an online student as much, so this is really the distinction I got from the course. There was the distinction between your job, your career, and your calling. And the way I saw this, and this is a recreation of how it looked in my notebook. I've actually got my notebook here. And this is, we see a job as our income, and then our career as kind of the recognition that we get. And then our calling is when we're really able to do that stuff that's most meaningful to us. So I saw this like in terms of jobs. First job, I was a pizza delivery guy for Augustino's Pizza Palace in Hays, Kansas. The only time I've ever been mugged. Awesome that Joshua could join us. Welcome, Joshua. This is my co-speaker who's here today. And Joshua, somebody is going to help you go back downstairs, okay? Joshua, I love you, and I will see you later. I had a job at Kmart. I was the blue light specials king. Attention, Kmart shoppers, that flashing blue light has moved to our sporting goods area where we're featuring baseball bats half off. Be sure to have your purchase remarked before leaving the area. And as always, thank you for shopping here at Kmart. I was known for my blue light specials. And I was an SAT prep teacher. I worked for Shearson Lehman Brothers. We kind of know how that one worked out. Like, I had a lot of different jobs. But it wasn't until I started teaching that I really began to recognize my career. First at NYU Medical Center on the professional development team, then at NYU, later at Stanford, Columbia. And I was able to really see a career as a lecturer in higher ed. But my calling began to nibble and assert itself really in my recovery. From my battle with addiction, my battle with depression, and I began to see that suicide prevention, parenting, that was where Joshua was supposed to walk in. He missed his cue. Parenting with Ken, and I really began to see my calling was around helping people understand those distinctions and recover and step into life after challenges like I had been through. But after I looked at it for a while, it's not a stair step. It's not like you do a job in your 20s and a career in your 30s, 40s, and 50s and a calling in your 60s and 70s. That may be true for some folks. And I don't want to diminish that, but really, it looked more like this. Where did we go here? Looked more like this, that all of them could happen at the same time. That there are moments where I'm drawn to my calling, or I'm doing my job, or I'm focused on my career. Let me just give you one example of 1 week in my life. My job right now is teaching for USC. I'm blessed to have a faculty appointment at USC where I teach in their online master's program. It's online, it's very transactional. I don't have the kind of connection with my students that I had at Stanford. They want to do their homework, get grades, and get out of there. And I have found that I want to do their grades and be done and get them out of there. I enjoy it, but I wouldn't say I love it. And I'm teaching off a common syllabus, which is early in your career, you're used to doing. You're handed a syllabus and you know that you do. But at this point, it's kind of hard for me to fit. Like, I can't create new lessons. I have to teach what's handed. But because I teach enough for USC, I have health benefits for our family of 5, which is crucial to be able to have. And so that job brings me both compensation, but also an important benefit that's important for the other stuff that I do. So in 1 week, I had grading that I had to do and teaching that I had to do for my job. My career now is a speaker and a workshop leader, and I was in DC. Here I taught for a program at Stanford, and then I ran to the airport. Toby ran me to the airport. I flew to DC, and I taught workshops at a conference on leadership skills and storytelling skills, and then I flew back home. But my calling was on Monday or Friday of that week. I worked with a program for entrepreneurs who are working in the creating innovations in the mental health space. And that brought together everything that I love to do. And so from Monday to Friday, I had job, I had career, I had calling, and they all fit together for me. And in fact, deeper into my understanding of the lessons at the Modern Elder Academy, I learned of the distinction of the ikigai. Anyone familiar with ikigai? It's a Japanese framework for looking at the areas of our life and be able to have a life well lived. Now, this is kind of a sketch from my notebook of what an ikigai is, and it's a Venn diagram with 4 overlapping circles. So you have on the left side what you're good at the top what you love, on the right side what the world needs, and at the bottom what you can be paid for. And the aspiration is if I can pull all four of those together, if I can have a profession, a passion, a mission, and a vocation where all four of those circles overlap each other, that is that sense of ikigai. That is that sense of a life, as Audrey's saying, where I have it all. And it's an aspiration. Much like the distinction of mastery that I talk a lot about in my communication work, this is an aspiration that you shoot for, but you may not achieve. There are times that maybe just 2 or 3 of the circles will be active and overlapping for us. But I know that I want to be sure that I have all of them brought together. I want to shoot for that alignment of all of them. Now, I'm going to leave that up there for a bit because I want to describe for you, and one of the actions you can take is to do your own ikigai. And I just did this on scratch paper. And here comes part of my ikigai. He can stay up here for a bit. Stay up here with me, Josh, for a little bit, okay? I'm going to send you away in a minute. What I love at the top, come here, everybody. See the circles up on the screen? What I love is my kids, is my mentoring, is my spouse, and is being able to bring people together. That's what I love. On the right, what I think the world needs is a sense of mental fitness. The work I do in suicide prevention, the volunteer work I do on the crisis text line, the entrepreneurs that I work with that are bringing about a sense of mental health and mental fitness. And we need inclusion, and we need a sense of welcome in our faith communities, in our school communities, in our work communities. Down at the bottom, what I can be paid for, well, except for when I'm here at Unity, I get paid for speaking. David went and handed out checks to the singers and the musicians. I'm like, yeah, hello, I'm here. But in other parts of my life, I'm paid to speak. I get paid to coach, and I get paid to teach. And then over on the left-hand side, what I'm good at. I'm good at storytelling. And I'm good at elevating others. I'm good at helping people be able to tell their stories in a way that allows them to be powerful and compelling. I love speaking at TED and at TEDx events. More so, I love to help people do that and do that effectively and do that well. So sometimes all four of them will be together, and sometimes just elements of them will show up. But aspirationally, I want to keep my eye on that full ikigai relationship. Okay, Josh, I'm going to have you go back downstairs now, okay? You'll come back up when we're singing and dancing, all right? You ready for that? Can you go down with Marcus? All right. Thank you, Marcus. Thanks, Joshua. You were a great prop for what I wanted to say. I also noticed after I did this that if I draw the circle correctly, and I thought about doing it on the slides last night, but I didn't, it actually makes a butterfly. When you pull together the profession, vocation, mission, and passion, and we have seen throughout the service the emblem of the chrysalis and the butterfly, and that sense of rebirth, that sense of renewal, and that sense of reinvention. And while my experience during 2020 was kind of dramatic, for me, kind of traumatic, we all have little experiences of renewal, rebirth, reinvention. There are even times when we get into a given day and it's like, I thought it was going to go this way. Let me pause, let me step back, let me reinvent what I was thinking of and what I was considering that I wanted to do. There was a slide I skipped through that I just want to go back to for a second, and that is this. I actually have framed in my office every business card from every job I've ever had. Now, it's kind of interesting. There is a little black space under on the right-hand side, so maybe there's 1 or 2 more business cards coming. I'm not sure. And I actually had this as a single column. I had to redo it and have it as a dual column. But that's the career. That's that career piece. But that's not my calling. It's not my passion. That's the way in which income has come into my life. And that's the way in which the world has seen me beyond my life. There's a thought that I want to close with in a moment here. And before I do that, I acknowledge that I'm doing this. We joked about it, but I'm doing this literally as a gift to Ken so that he can have some time away. As a gift to all of you, I'm going to be a shorter speaker than he is. So we're gonna get to hospitality a little earlier. Unless David goes crazy with announcements, okay? We're gonna get to hospitality a little earlier. But the thought that I want to leave you with is a quote that comes from George Bernard Shaw, and I had heard this quote many years ago. And on one of my first dates with Ken, we were traveling. We were in. We were near where the George Bernard Shaw Festival happens. And I said, I wonder if I can get that quote like on a postcard or a t-shirt or whatever. And we looked and we looked and we looked and we never could find it. But we did find, but he did take this to an artist and have it done for me. And this was one of my first birthday gifts from Ken. It hangs in my office. But I want to give you the full quote from George Bernard Shaw. This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being a force of nature. I love that that's on Audrey's website. The being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I had to carefully make no eye contact with people for that last sentence. But if that describes you, consider. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live it, it is my privilege to do for the community whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I've got a hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations.